Warm greetings, everyone. Welcome to Talk with PCF. I'm really honoured to have a young, bright group sitting here with me today. Youth from around the region, from Aotearoa, but also the Pacific region. So we're basically here to just unpack some findings from our perceptions report that you should all be familiar with and aware of, which is this. So if you don't have it, it is available off our website to download for free and to read. And you'll find some really interesting facts that have come out of this report. And youth are a huge cohort, or a very important cohort of our population, but also our community. And often they're not given the opportunity to speak. And you know, here at PCF, we're about amplifying voices and amplifying the voices of both our youth, our Pacific people in our community. So it's great to have them all here today. And I'll just ask them all to introduce themselves briefly, and then as we get further on in the conversation, we'll get them to unpack the reason why they're here with us today. I'll open up and invite Nidhi to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Nidhi Chetty, and I'm currently in high school, just finished year 12, and I live here in Auckland.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm going into my final year studying economics and politics, and I'm from Papua New Guinea.
Hi everyone, my name is Asala. I just completed my bachelor's degree in business, majoring in accounting, and I'm also from Papua New Guinea.
Kia ora, I'm Regan. I'm just studying politics at Vic. I'm down from Poneke.
Great, wonderful. So it's awesome to have a young bunch here. And you would have seen from our other Talk episodes that we have done, we'd like to feature a whole variety and depth and diversity of voice and thought here on our Talk episodes. So enough about me and enough about us just for now. This episode really is just to look at some issues that youth, both here in New Zealand and also in the region, are facing. And often we don't get to hear those things. We hear about what is happening in the region, but often we don't give our youth enough airtime to actually talk through these issues. So today, we're going to ask everyone to give a brief introduction to who they are and why they're here. And then we're going to just have some kōrero talanoa around the table around some of these issues that we're all facing today. And, you know, I'm honoured as the auntie of the group to actually facilitate this conversation that has been a long time coming. And when we look at our perceptions report, again, it's a positive report, and it shows that Pacific people from all walks of, from right across the moana, actually have a place here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I want to open up the floor with our youngest member here today with Nidhi. Thank you, Nidhi, for taking the day off school. We'll make sure you won't get in trouble. If you can just talk to us about who you are and some of the work that you've been doing in the community, and also the work that you're doing, that you've done with the Gurumit Foundation, and what the work that they do and how important it is for you young Fijians, Indo-Fijians, in you know, your identity, and how the work that you're doing in strengthening your identity as Pacific here in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
So, yes, I am from Fiji, and I was there recently visiting family this September, and the big thing I noticed was that kids, their youth especially there, speak in English. You have to speak in English to them for them to understand what you're saying. And me and most of the kids around my age, we grew up speaking our mother tongue. So with the Gurumit Foundation, we focus on telling people how important our language is, especially because it's a very unique language. It's not the Hindi spoken in India. It's only spoken in Fiji. So that's why we call it Fiji Hindi as well.
And what else do you do? There's a little movement that you have with young women.
Yes, I do 1 Billion Rising. I hold it every Feb. And it's focused around stopping violence against women. And I am the youngest coordinator and the official coordinator for New Zealand. So I've been involved in this since 2017, and I joined with my mom, and it's very interesting due to personal reasons as well. So that's why I got involved in it more due to personal reasons. And then I was very interested, and I saw how much it helped youth and people generally. So when I moved here to New Zealand about 4 years ago, like no one did it here. No one knew about 1 Billion Rising. So my mom did it with a few of her friends a couple of years back. And then I started doing it for the past 2 years. So I'm definitely trying to get more community in it and diversity.
Right. And so how many have you got in your movement so far?
We've got a lot of people so
Okay.
far, a lot of women, yes.
Yeah, because I've
I
seen
can't-
your things
yes.
on YouTube and
Yes.
social.
I don't remember the exact number, but we always get new families every year. So
great.
that's nice.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to pass it over to Regan. Regan Winiera, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're here, and just, yeah.
Well, I'm here as I'm currently on an internship with VCF as the Communications and Social Media Officer, which has been I've only been here for a day and a half, but it's been such a thrill already. But a bit about myself is I was born in Poneke. I'm from Ngāti Toa, which is the local iwi. I've been studying at Vic for the past year, and I've been fighting the hard fight with Labour, and we've just been helping out in the political movements in the area with people like Barbara Emmons, Chris Hipkins, Abraham Omar, and just really just trying to get people understanding like we're trying to make the experience of life in New Zealand, quality of life better by just new policies, new transport, new everything, just policies overall that are sweeping domestic and abroad that help out, like how we remove the prescriptions. I've been trying to get that across the board to the youth of New Zealand, and I've been working with last year and this year with the youth voter turnout group, which we've been trying to make sure young people are heard and had their voices heard by helping them get enrolled, teaching them that enrollment is not a long process, that it is a short process, and that you can enroll on the day for voting. That you don't need identification, that there are no blocks or barriers in the way for youth to try and get out to vote, as their voice is commonly not heard in New Zealand's political landscape.
Cool, thank you. You've done some empowering work. So we'd hope to hear some more as the conversation carries on. Teresa Patterson from Papua New Guinea, who's here on a Manaki scholarship, currently studying at the University of Auckland. Can you just share a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing and your internship journey that you're doing with Pacific Corporation Foundation?
So the internship journey just started yesterday, so I've only been there for a day and a half. But it's been wonderful. They gave me my assigned topic, which is Pacific trade, which has been really interesting. I didn't realize how many aspects of the economy that trade can impact and influence. So that's been really good. I'm not currently involved in any community projects, but I did work as a journalist back home in Papua New Guinea. So I interviewed. Specifically, we focused on women's issues. There's a high incidence of unique things like sorcery-based violence, which you don't really find in maybe countries outside of the Pacific,
Right.
or maybe even countries outside of just Papua New Guinea. I did also interview a couple of youths. So we have a booming youth population back home, but there's not a lot of opportunities for them around access to education. So a lot of them, they fall into bad habits. They get in with the wrong crowd. So there's a high incidence of drug use as well, and criminal activity that contributes to the perception that Papua New Guinea is generally unsafe. In terms of community projects that I've gotten involved with here, not specific to youth, but I did volunteer with the Citizens Advice Bureau, early this year from February to August. So it was just basically, I served as a receptionist there, and we would help people who had questions about their rights. And I also worked with the census team. So I worked in the Upper Queen Street area, and we were delivering the forms to mostly young-ish population. But they were very receptive to receiving the forms. They seemed to know what it was all about. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And we brings us now to Asela Tarasomo, who is not a stranger. She's quite familiar with PCF, and she's been here. We've interviewed her, so you would have seen her on some of our talk episodes where we talk about her internship journey that she's done with us in the last couple of years. But Asela, it'd be just really good for you to unpack, aside from your internship, you finished your study, you're going back home. Can you just talk to us about some of the issues that you'll be facing as you return home and looking for employment?
Oh, yeah. So I think for me and for everyone who's finishing uni, both outside the country and in the country, is basically finding a job. We were just talking about it before we came out here. When you're in primary, when you start your schooling, there's a whole heap of you, and then as you go to high school, like there's not a lot of you, and then as you go to uni, because there's limited spaces in uni, and I speak for Papua New Guinea only, there's limited space in uni, so the number of you gets even smaller, and then when you go into the workforce, it's even smaller because there's not a lot of jobs, and like you were saying earlier, it's who you know at this point. So I think the biggest challenge for me at this point is finding a job, which I've already gotten into. Haven't been successful yet, but I am hopeful. I'm also looking forward to seeing my family. It's been a long 4 years. But yeah, I'm happy to go back and see how I can make changes and impact not only my family, but the community as well.
Great. Thank you so much to everyone for your little introductions. So Nevi, thank you for sharing what you've been doing with 1,000 Women Rising and then the work that you're doing with Gurumit. I'm really interested in the journey that you've taken in being here, coming from Fiji, coming here to New Zealand, and what you've faced in that journey around identity.
From Fiji to here, one of the first big things I noticed was like when you're filling out forms here in New Zealand, you have Fiji and Indian as separate boxes, and then you've got Asian. So we aren't Indian, but we aren't fully Fijian. We're Fiji Indians, but we're not under Asians either. We do classify as Pacifica. So it was a really confusing time for me at that point because I didn't know what I was. I was like, I'm from Fiji. I was born in Fiji. Am I Fijian? But my ethnicity, I'm Indian. But am I Asian then? So it was a very confusing time. And then I came across Gurumit, Fiji Gurumit Foundation, the youth team, and they kind of helped me understand. And we're still trying to this day to kind of work around that and see what how other youth feel, if they care about it. So we recently had, I think, just a discussion like this, and we were like, when you guys are filling out forms, what do you fill out? And they're like, oh, I mean, I'm Indian, so I just fill out Indian. And then the others are like, well, I just fill out Asian. I fill out Pacifica. They're all separate, but we're all from Fiji. We're all Fiji Indians. We speak the same language. And I think the big thing for me was that we're our own identity, and having to like separate that and come under one big thing that, like, if I was to take Indian, it would be like, oh yeah, so you're from India. No, I'm not. I mean, I don't speak the Hindi spoken in India, sorry. So I think what you fill out, it defines you, who you are as a person, you know? So yeah, so I mostly fill out Pacifica. So and as for 1 Billion Rising, I know like not a lot of people or kids around my age are interested in topics such as this or not heavily involved in it. For me, I joined it with like my mom. I was just there. I was dancing. I love dancing.
Yeah.
And it was a global movement, and you show that through dance.
Yeah.
It's called Break the Chain, right? That's the dance. So I was there. I was dancing. And then as I grew older, I started learning more about it, like really in depth. And then I saw personally, like from personal experience, I was, oh yeah, this is what we faced. This is not okay. Like people should know about this. And when I told people about it, I was like, yeah, this is what you go through. And they're like, oh, really? I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Isn't that normal? And you're like, no, I don't think so. So I was very passionate about it. I was in touch when I moved here. I was in touch with everything going on in Fiji and regarding that. And I was like, we should do something here about it. And Fiji Gurmit Youth Foundation actually helped me. They were like, we can have when we celebrate Women's Day, we can do this with that. So that was one of like the big things, and a lot of people got to know about it. And when we all came together, we were all able to talk about it, and I got the opportunity to educate people on it, and it was really nice. So I guess the reason was because I was passionate about it,
Right.
through personal experience, and then just analyzing the world, I guess.
Nevi, can I just say I've not met many 16-year-olds like you who are just so driven and passionate about the work that they're doing. Today we see 16-year-olds on social media, they have other thoughts. They're worried about the latest makeup trends, the latest dance trends. It's all about themselves, right? Where you really flip that script and it's all about what can I do for mankind, my community. So what is it? Can you unpack with us that drives you to do what you do as a 16-year-old? Because you're an inspiration to other 16-year-olds and you're an inspiration for, the youth of today out there in the region that are looking for heroes and champions that we don't get to see often. So please unpack with us. What is it that drives you to do what you do? What is your why?
Thank you. I guess if like you said, there's people looking to look up at people. I had for me it was Malala Yousafzai. I was a big fan of hers, and I guess it all comes down to the fact that I want to see a better future.
Right.
I love working with kids. I love kids. I just love hanging around kids, seeing what they have to say, and to think like I want a better future for them. It's more about it's about them, it's not I want a better future for myself, but I also want a better future for my fellow youth people, I want to see how the world evolves. I want to make a change. I want to people have different mentalities, of course. And some are not bad, not good, but they're different, definitely different. And I do want for them to just open up. And another thing we talked about with 1 Billion Rising was how people don't talk. They keep it to themselves. And I've seen a lot of kids do that too now. So it's just that I want a better future for them. That's what drives me, I guess. It's just,
That's
pretty
awesome.
much.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Because, the future is looking bright. If we've got people like you here at the table driving that future, and if you do have a passion to inspire the young, even better. Which brings me to you, Regan. It'll be good for you to just talk to us, unpack the work that you've done in the latest election with getting youth to come out and vote, because if youth don't come out and vote and they don't have a voice, then they're not going to be heard, right? What is it for you that has driven you to do what you have done this year down in Pōneke?
One of my drivers, Māori are always painted in darker lights and more hostile tones. And I want to get out there, and I wanted to help my community, my whānau, my iwi, my hapu, make sure that we're heard, we're seen, that we're not just seen as what sometimes the media portrays us as. Sometimes we're seen in good lights as athletes, sometimes we're seen in bad lights as gangsters, mobsters. But the thing is, we're just normal people. we might look a little different, but we all want to get out there and just be seen and being heard. And that's why it drove me since I was back with my whānau back in Poneke, back with my iwi. It drove me to go out, since Wellington, or the area I lived in Te Ara Valley, it's a youth popular centre since it's right next to Calburn campus. So I knew I'd be hitting young doors, I'd be getting young people who are studying, but maybe not know all the ins and outs of the New Zealand electoral system, voting, who they should be making their choices of, and just really speaking from hearts to minds and trying to get people to understand why this vote was so critical. Didn't go in the result that we were hoping for, but it's still, people were receptive, people were out there thinking and just challenging the normative thought and asking empirical questions, saying, is this what I've been told, or is this what I've been fed? Like, this is what I need to look up myself. Make people ask the hard questions. Make the youth see that it's up to them, that we will have to one day make our own choices. And when we're in university, while we're here, we should start asking the hard questions, find out more. And that's what's just got me into it more and more, just every day, just trying to think and understand, why do I do this? I do it to just get visibility. I get to, so our voices can be heard, so we can be amplified, and that we're not just swept under the carpet. We're not just forgotten about. We're not just a relic, a token.
Right. And is that what drives you to study what you're studying today? So do you want to unpack with us what it is that you're studying at Victoria University,
So currently,
and how that relates to what the work that you've just been talking about?
So currently I'm moving into my second year next year as an undergrad for political science as my major, but also in my minors, policy and criminology. The reason why I've been studying, we'll start with my minor, criminology, is because I've always been fascinated by it, but also it's so I can understand and help people understand that we're not criminals, that we're not just there we're not there as the media sometimes represents us on your neighborhood, on your streets, terrorizing your family. When that's not us. That's a small proportion of us that the media likes to disproportionately blow out. That we're not all there. That's not us. We just like to go to work, go play games, go to the theaters and everything like everybody else. That we're not. We're New Zealanders. You're New Zealanders. We're from Aotearoa. You're from New Zealand. We're one and the same. And that's kind of why I added one of my minors as criminology. So it's easier for me to understand, but also be able to prove and show the people that we're not just violent. We're just normal people. And then with my political science major, I had a very unique opportunity in high school to shadow a minister of the government, so which showed me how I can cause more effect and greater change through the political landscape than any other means, in my opinion, or any other direction or paths. That he really showed me that we can be the people and we can be the change that we want to see for our futures, for everybody's future.
That's awesome. So we look forward to seeing you in Parliament in the future, right?
Yes.
And then we play this video back and go, how well have you kept your little promise? So talking about university and looking at political science and criminology, I'm going to swing this way to you, Teresa, because you're studying policy, right? You've come in from your policy and politics. What is policy? So can you help demystify for those who are listening and watching, what is policy? What is it about? And why have you come from journalism that you did in Papua New Guinea to study policy here at Auckland?
So I study politics and economics, but policy is a very big area that would incorporate both of them, where the two meet very well. Policy, in a nutshell, is just basically what the government decides to do or not to do. Even choosing not to pursue a form of action is effectively taking a stance. And the project that I'm working on for my internship has to do with Pacific trade. So as I said earlier, that trade impacts many aspects of the economy. It has the ability to influence the incomes of people, their standards of living, the quality of life. So it's very good that I'm working on that project, because I actually wasn't sure what area to focus on. Economics is quite broad, but potentially that could be an area that I work in when I go back home, is in analyzing and formulating trade agreements, because my country, Papua New Guinea, relies a lot on trade. Developing countries in general are increasingly trading with each other and with developed countries like New Zealand as well. My drive for why I got into policy and economics and politics was because I worked as a journalist. And a lot of the events that I was writing about or covering, they could be explained by economic analysis and analysis of the political landscape and the actors. Politics and economics are like two sides of the same coin. They give different reasons for why certain things happen the way they do. So I wanted to understand why certain things played out the way they did, and that was why I chose to study these things. And if I can understand something, I can then change it.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a nutshell, that's my motivation. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And it's great to see that you're studying these subjects at university, which is inspiring for people like our young 16-year-old with the work that she's doing in the community. Education is a huge part, right, of this entire journey, because only if we're educated, we're able to have a voice, and then also be able to give those who don't have as much education the opportunity to be able to share as well. Be interesting for you, Arcella, to unpack with us. You're now finished your study. You're going back to Papua New Guinea.
Yes.
You're going to embark on this journey of looking for employment.
Yeah.
What does an ideal job look like for you? And, what does an ideal employer look like for you after you've worked and you've done 2 internships with us here? So you've, got real exposure into what working life is like here in New Zealand. Can you unpack for us what you're hoping to go back home to, and then what the reality is?
Right. So for me, I'm not picky. I know that life's tough back home with the inflation and everything that's going on in the world today. Life's really tough back home. So at this point, I'll take anything I can get to help my family. So I'm not really picky, but if you're asking me what I would do if I had the choice, I'd definitely get into auditing, because that's where my passion is. Never saw myself doing auditing, let alone studying accounting. I got into accounting, I think by chance, really. I finished my grade, so back home we have grades, right? So I finished my grade 12 in 2014, and then I made it to uni 2015. And then I couldn't go back to uni because of financial constraints. And so I started looking for jobs, and I found a receptionist job with the radio company. And then that receptionist role eventually turned into me being the admin assistant and then the accounts payable and payroll officer. And I learned everything on the job, and I decided, wow, I really like accounting. And so I applied for scholarships to do my degree in accounting. I applied 3 times for the one I'm currently on, and I got it on the 3rd time. And I'm here, so I know what it's like to be looking for jobs and to have an opportunity to have a job. So I'm not picky on any job. That I'll take anything at this point. Yeah.
If the tables were turned and you found yourself back here in Aotearoa or in Australia,
Right.
where would you like? Okay, you want to go into auditing?
Yeah.
Do you see where you'd like to be if you were given that opportunity to come and settle here and be offered a full-time job? Where would it be?
Definitely at one of the big 4s. Because I do believe that auditing is a good starting point for any accounting professional who's starting off. So definitely any big 4. I'd love to work for a big 4 here.
Awesome. Okay.
you're gonna cut this off, right?
We had that effect on people.
You have to cut this out.
No, but this is what keeps it
yeah.
raw. This is what
tissues?
people want to see, is that
Yeah.
it is not rehearsed. It's not.
Yeah.
We're not giving you a script. This is straight from the heart. This is
Definitely. Right. So to answer your question about like who I see when I close my eyes, definitely my mom. Sorry. She passed away in. Sorry.
take your time.
She passed away in 2016, and so I really had to take on that responsibility of taking care of the family and whatnot. I mean, I have siblings and but yeah, really everything fell on me because at the time I was the only one working and just supporting my family, paying for my brother's school fee and whatnot. And so to come back to study, scholarships were the only way. And so I applied for this one, and they got me on the third time. And really, as Pacific Islanders, God is a huge part of anything we do. And I believe that it was His timing and His plan. And yeah, everything worked out for the better.
Awesome. So on that note, let's unpack these. Take a break. Let's take a break. COP28 stands for the 28th Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. In this guide, we call it COP. So it is also referred to as the UN Climate Change Convention. So all the leaders of the world get together and they talk about how each is going to help mitigate or help us adapt to what is happening out there in the climate. So key facts about nature and climate is that the target for limiting global warming, we all know what global warming is, right? So the earth is, the world is, the temperature is rising, increasing, and the target is for us to try and keep it at 1.5 or lower.
Yeah.
I heard something over the weekend that it has gone to 2.1.
Really?
So we're actually not seeing it decrease or lessen. We're actually seeing the world is getting hotter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not seeing that happen. So, what is COP28? Why are we getting together when we're actually seeing things go the other way? And that we're supposed to see a third of the amount of emission reductions reduced by a third by protecting and restoring nature. So, you look at these big forests. So I'm sure in Papua New Guinea, you've got these big forests, right? Amazonian forests where people cut the trees down so that they can make way for housing, residential. They need the wood, but actually we need more forests because forests, are a lot better for the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then the other fact is that we're supposed to see the amount of climate funding increase and help towards adaptation. So one big thing that I am hearing that they're going to be discussing at COP, which is massive for the Pacific, is around how do we ensure that we're actually accessing climate finance, because all these big countries are supposed to put money into this big pool, and then our countries like in the Pacific should be able to access those so that we can help with mitigation and adaptation, but actually we haven't been able to access those funds. So what is climate change for you?
Well, climate change for me is it's just rising temperatures, glacial shelves being slowly but surely dropping into the ocean, and that's pretty bad for rising sea temperatures. But it's also the mix of the saline water mixed with fresh water, which then just causes a greater displacement under the underwater currents, but also those currents affect the El Nino and La Nina effect, which causes massive heat waves in the areas, or can cause to typhoons, monsoons, cyclones, hurricanes, like how New Zealand was battered earlier this year with Cyclone Gabriel. And in my local area, we lost one of our local firefighters to the landslides in the Middle Beach.
Definitely, when I hear climate change, I just think about back home how we have a season literally called tropical season.
Tropical
hurricane
cyclone.
season.
Yeah, tropical cyclone
So I do
season.
think of a lot of the hurricanes and cyclones that go on over there. And like at COP28, since I just heard about it yesterday, it's very interesting. I do want to see what they have to say, and hopefully there is change that we see and how they execute things from then forth.
At a lot of these conferences, I think there's just a lot of talk and rehashing of goals that they've set before, and there's like those agendas are not operationalized when they go back home. And there's a lot of economic and political interests that are protecting their business interests, like oil companies, and very powerful, very powerful actors who are able to define the agenda and how it's operationalized in local and domestic contexts. I would like to see meaningful change, because as a young person, and I also have a young brother, I don't want him growing up in a very precarious, uncertain world. We live in the coast in Papua New Guinea. We're kind of protected because we have like mountains, and so we don't get a lot of the severe weather that you might see in New Zealand. But that could very well change. Like there's a lot of uncertainty, even in the science of climate change itself and its effects. It's still being understood. So yeah, I'd really like to see just definitive commitment from the governments that go to these conferences, and a commitment locally to take affirmative action in tackling it.
And how important do you think it is for people like yourselves here at the table to be able to have a voice around that? So you're saying you're wanting to see a commitment from those, those heavy hitters. But how are we in the Pacific? How can you make a difference?
I think, well, participating in this talks, having avenues for, I guess, for amplifying your voices. I think if you also have like a human face to the problem, that makes it a lot more personal when you talk about these things at the high level stage. And I did interview a woman who took matters into her own hands. She's from a province, a small town in Papua New Guinea, where the sea levels were rising. So she coordinated to I don't know what you call them, but the bags, the sandbags. Yes, to sort of protect the homes that were quite close to the shore. So she did that all on her own, and she was recognized for her efforts. And now she was sponsored. Ironically, she was sponsored by ExxonMobil to go and study in the States, and now she's an engineer with them.
But back home.
Yeah, but back home. So that's her full-time job, but she's also involved in community projects that work at the local level to she's taking affirmative action before even the leaders have decided what they want to do. So it's things like that. It's noticing what you can do and doing as much as you can.
And not having to sit around and wait for others to come and tell you what needs to be done, which does happen, right? People do sit around and wait, and then there's others who take it upon themselves to go, I'm going to make the change. What does climate change mean for you, Arcela?
Thank you for that question. Because back home, my dad is from an atoll outside of one of the provinces, and it's a small island, and it's because of the rising sea levels, life gets harder on the island. So for me, climate change is really just about trying to minimize the effects of the rising sea level, the sun, and all of that. And in all honesty, I have never heard of COP28 until today, but I would like to see changes because we in the Pacific, we're the ones most affected. I mean, all countries are affected by global warming, climate change, whatnot. But I feel like us in the Pacific, we're we take it harder.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because our livelihoods, everything about us depends on the land, on the sea, and yeah, just definitely would love to see change come out of COP28. So I have to be honest and say that I've never been to my dad's island, so I can't really tell you how hard life is when we talk about climate change and the effect it has on my people back there. But I know that there's been talks of having to move them from the island to the mainland because of the rising sea level. I've also heard that some of the elders there don't want to leave, and that because it's been their home for years and years, and so they said that they would stay on the island until the island sank and whatnot. But yeah, I do know that it's harder because we have different islands, and like one for growing food and one for everyone to live on and whatnot. And I know that with the sea levels rising, it has really made it harder. Sorry, and has
Yeah,
yeah.
If there's no land,
Yeah.
and if the sea's messed up,
Yeah.
what does that look like for you people?
That's a really scary thought to think about, because that would mean that there would be no island and my people, that would be the end of people from my place. So it's really hard to think about, and it's something that I haven't really thought about.
but it's happening
But
today.
it's happening,
right? And we're seeing countries where through climate change populations are being displaced,
yes,
right? So
yes.
they call it climate migration. And I think some of you are familiar with what's happening with Tuvalu, where we visibly see that the country is disappearing, right? And so they're asking for help, but in a way that is authentic, right? And that they're not losing or ceding sovereignty. And Australia has come to them and said, hey, look, we will we will take in families who are being displaced because of climate change or rising sea levels, but which is a good thing, right? They're being offered an opportunity. But what people aren't looking at is it's not just about moving people. We're asking them to give up their land.
Yeah.
We're also potentially asking them to give up their identity, their culture, and their language, which is what we don't want.
Yeah.
So when we talk about authentic engagement, so that they're not having to, think about those things.
Yeah.
That's what makes it hard, because I think that's what they're like, okay, it's okay for me to pick up and let go, but all the memories, they probably have ancestral burial grounds there, the culture, language is just, we can't just let it disappear. So I think it is a scary thing that, people, the Tuvaluans, but also it's happened to other countries, like what's happened with the Barnabans, right? The Barnabans were chased off their island so that they can be mined for phosphate. And great, they were able to resettle, but they are still having to live with the scars of, giving up their identity, giving up their home, their whenua. It's not as easy. So for a lot of people, it's a hurtful time, and that creates that intergenerational trauma that that we're starting to see come through today. So any thoughts on that? Other thoughts or any comments that you want to make as a...
I think when people think about moving to Australia, everyone thinks a better life, a better this, a better that. But like you said, I don't think people understand that, leaving your country and going to another country, you're also leaving your identity. How sure are you that you will take your practices that you do on your island, go do it in Australia? Like, how sure are you gonna be able to do that? So yeah, it's good and it's bad.
Yeah, definitely. The thought of losing your island is very scary, because even though I didn't spend much time in Fiji, I did spend more than half of my life there. And now, like, when I go back, I can see, like, it reminds me, I was like, oh yeah, here we did this, here we did that. They're all memories, and the thought of just thinking about them just under the sea, lost, you can't go visit that island anymore, is really scary. So,
And like, that's your home, right? Yeah.
Exactly. You can't do what you do in Fiji here.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
When you say you can't do what you do in Fiji here, what do you mean?
Our culture, our land, the way we do things, our understandings, beliefs,
Mm.
It's our own little community. You
Mm.
know, we all understand each other in close ways and stuff. And I don't think you'd be able to do that here.
Mm.
Because again, it's an island of its own.
Yeah.
You know your own people, and basically that.
Mm.
So, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Regan?
Just coming from looking at from my point of view, from my whānau, we've always, even where I'm from, we've always relied on the coast. We've always relied on fishing practices. Before, like, we moved off to our careers, I remember there was times where if we lost our coastline, if we lost where we did all of our activities, it'd be a devastating and it would immense scar to my whānau, to my iwi, and to my tribe that would not be able to be undone. As we've had minor displacement here and there, but we've never faced great adversity like some of the more inland tribes have. Because I'm also from Te Arawa, so we're built around freshwater fishing and all that, and just protecting all the sense of guardianship of our land, and just making sure that we can look after it. But with forests being destroyed, kauri dieback, all that being brought in, and just forests dying, it just gets a little too much sometimes when we lose big trees, big land, a lot of land. It feels like we've lost a bit of ourselves in the process. Well, I mean, I would say it's less logging, less deforestation. It's because, I mean, trees, they do a lot of conversion from CO2 to O2 as well, but also just if you do fell a tree, have proper procedures and have proper, like, not just saying we'll plant trees, but actually have that done beforehand before you start chopping down. So if you have this plains area here that won't affect agriculture or just general living, have that already pre-planted before you fell a small part of the forest, so that it's a balance. So it keeps it in balance, and also it's done before you do it. Because then some companies have been found in the past guilty of not doing it or not properly taking care of their waste when they do logging, and that's taken out. Well, and earlier this year with all the rain and all the cyclone, it's taken out bridges. Waste has cut communities off so fast. In moments, the whole community had been cut off from the rest of the nation. So I'd just say, is one thing I'd like action to happen is just more trees planted, more. You do the environmental side before you do the business side.
So I'm a big believer of like getting the little things done before getting the big things, before the big things can be done, right? And so if I was to tell people my age what to do in order to minimize climate change, I'd be just the little things really. Turn off that light. If you're going down to the dairy and it's just down the road, walk instead of drive. Close the fridge, just the little things. Really, yeah.
The small things do make a huge
Yeah.
difference, and if all it takes everyone doing that small thing,
Yeah.
you start to see a change.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Because yesterday because I'm in the process of moving house, and I had to like declutter my room, and I saw like all this rubbish, but they all have like recycling instructions.
Mm.
So I'm trying to be because New Zealand is very big on recycling, and you have a lot of different rules. So I'm like researching what's the nearest bin to like get rid of. So every little bit helps, and the more people do it, the bigger the difference it will make. Equally, politicians will listen if the voice is loud enough. So if all of us are pulling together and talking about these things and doing our bits, engaging with we don't really have that mechanism back home, but here you can make submissions, you can call up your political parties. It's very accessible. So yeah, do those little things, and hopefully the tides will change and the people in power will listen. Yeah.
I definitely agree that doing those little things makes a huge difference. And if people could make that like a part of their daily life, like you said, like turn off the lights and walking. Yeah, it's not not only is it just healthy to walk places,
Yeah.
it's you're helping.
Mm.
Like it doesn't take much time,
Mm.
and you don't have to do much. So
Mm.
definitely just those little things.
Also, one thing that we don't talk about, what you're all too young to realize, but Pacific, we have our own ways of dealing with climate change, right?
Mm.
Because we have had to weather the storm
Mm.
for many, many years, hundreds of years,
Mm.
the Pacific. So there is an indigenous way of, fighting climate change. And you would have all seen it at some point in your life. Is there something that you can think about that you would have done as a child back home that you can say now, given you're talking about recycling,
Mm.
turning off the lights, walking down the road? Is there something else? Or is there something that you can remember from your childhood that you did that was mitigating against climate change?
So I remember when I was in primary and it was World Environment Day, I think, and we all brought a plant to school and planted it around the school.
Mm.
Yeah.
Cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good because we see a lot of that back home now
Yeah.
in the gardens. How about you?
I
Regan?
remember going around primary school. We'd always have would be taught would be taught about the taniwha and how it would be poisoning his living area, and just how the taniwha would get you if you didn't recycle. So
That's a good one.
it's always been a favorite of mine.
Yeah. Are you, Teresa? Something that you can remember from your childhood?
Yeah, I was born in the 90s, so I remember a lot of playing. So there's
Mm.
not a lot of being on your phone, which is
Yep.
very
Mhm.
energy saving.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of that, and we had a huge backyard. The beach was just right around the corner, so a lot of just being out in nature and enjoying it with your cousins, and, which I think is lost on maybe
yeah.
a lot of the younger generations now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you, Nevi? Young 16-year-old? I'm sure there's something your mother did with you.
I do remember
Grandparents?
because back in Fiji, I'm from Mombasa, so in our village, we didn't have like reception where we live, not that good at least until
Mhm.
now. But at that time, like Wi-Fi wasn't a thing there.
Yeah.
So I was always outside. I was
Mhm.
always running out of the house. My grandma used to chase after me. But I was always playing outside. And I do remember in primary school, we did also like bring a plant and plant it in
Yeah.
our little gardens. Our
Mm.
class, we called it our class gardens.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then at the end of the year, we're like, oh, let's see who's grew.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, I remember that. It was really nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and so when I was young, I remember we didn't have as many cars back in those days, and we all had to walk everywhere or catch a
Mm.
bus. So we
Yeah.
didn't have as many cars as what we see today. So to wrap this all up, and thank you for everyone's contributions today, now's an opportunity to see what's not being talked about that we haven't talked about here today.
One thing we were talking about, was well-being
Mm.
back in the Pacific communities.
Mm.
People don't talk not about their feelings. They talk about other people,
Yep.
yes,
Yeah.
but not about their feelings.
Yeah.
So like what's happening in others' lives more than your own.
Yeah.
That's the thing there, and I
Definitely.
feel like women talk amongst themselves,
Mm.
but men, they don't talk about the issues that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Definitely. I can speak for Papua New Guinea and say that talking about their feelings, talking about what's going on, what's upsetting them is definitely a sign of weakness. And so they don't talk about their problems. I don't think a lot of people know about the rising issue. I mean, the increasing numbers of mental health issues that we have back home and in the islands as well, because it's not talked about a lot. I know, and that was something that I was raised with as well. Like I was never taught to like talk about my feelings, kind of.
Yes.
And so when I came here and all the stress of uni and the stress of family and all of that, once it like I held it all in, and then it got to the point where like you need to like you can't turn anywhere else. You just need to talk to someone about it. And so when I mentioned that I would go see a counselor, it wasn't something that was like, oh, you're crazy for going and you're weak. It wasn't looked down upon. And so that talking about it to a counselor really helped me.
Yeah.
And I wish that for us in the islands that we would talk more about our feelings
Yeah.
and not bottle it up and turn to alcohol and drugs to release, all this
That-
stress and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with Fiji. I'd say it's same issue. They don't
Mm-mm.
talk about it.
Yeah.
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 Pretty much the same thing.
I have a friend. He came for studies, and I saw him the first time. He was he had good bit of weight on him, and then after a semester I saw him, and I'm like, hey, what's wrong? You're losing a lot of weight. What are you doing? He was like, stress and all of that. And I said, I'm seeing a counselor, bro. Why don't you see a counselor? I'm like, hey, I'm not weak, And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh no, it's not a sign of weakness, bro. You can see a counselor. It's all right. But we're still stuck in that space where, if you look for help or if you seek counseling, you're weak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That mentality.
Mhm.
It's something that they have to move on from.
Yeah.
I feel like I really wish they would normalize counselors and
And, like,
counseling
talking
sessions
about-
back
yeah.
in the islands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sorry.
No,
Like,
go ahead.
Because when I moved from Fiji to here, it was not only a lot of things were different, of course. But one thing was school, and it was how helpful schools are here. Of course, schools here are very modernized, and they have counselors on site throughout the school day that you could just go and see, just talk to. Doesn't
Mhm.
have to mean that you're depressed. No, just go
Yeah.
talk to them about school stress,
Yeah.
and it's so helpful. And I really wish schools back in Fiji had that, because not only is school stress in Fiji more compared to here,
Mm.
it's like students, I've heard of students, suicides and stuff like that. And it's a big problem there, because not only you have family pressure, and they have limited things they can study.
Mm.
So they have to do well in those for them to go and find a job. Like you said, employment's also a big issue.
Yeah, definitely.
So you have to have a good education, and all that stress. You do need to talk to someone about
Yeah.
all of that, because not
Yeah.
everyone is able to handle it themselves.
Yeah.
Even if they think they can.
Yeah. We were just saying before we came into this, we were talking about what are the issues affecting youths back home, and we came up with a lot of people associate youth issues with youth, drugs and alcohol, but not a lot of people talk about how unemployment is affecting the youth. It can be said that when youth don't have a job or don't have anything to do, they turn to criminal activities and
Yes.
drugs and alcohol
Yeah.
to
Support
yeah,
family,
yeah,
and
and
theft is a
Yeah.
big one.
it was
Theft.
just yeah.
Yeah.
So,
To feed
yeah.
To feed the family,
and
because
provide for families.
Yeah. So it's a really big issue. It's gonna take us some time, but
yes.
with the right people talking about it and continuing to talk about it,
Yeah.
I think we'll get there.
I'm not saying that Fiji doesn't have opportunity. They do, but if they had more,
Yeah.
So it's hard to find jobs in Fiji. You have to have a good education. And here people can. It's easy. Not easy, but you can find a job without education. They give
Yeah.
you a chance.
Yeah.
Now that's something that's not normal in
Mm.
Fiji.
It gets harder when
Yeah.
you have to know the right people to get to where you
Yes.
want to be or get
Yeah.
to have a job. I think that's a big thing back home as well.
Yeah.
Who you know.
Yeah, there are
Um,
systemic causes, and alcoholism, criminal activity,
Mm.
drugs are the symptoms of those sort of issues of not having access to education, opportunities for work.
Yeah.
I think the Pacific uniquely as well, because we believe in things like witchcraft. I'm a Christian, so I
Yeah.
don't really dabble in that stuff. But when someone has a mental illness, they think,
Yes.
oh,
Someone
someone has
spoiled
had,
it.
Poison.
someone has
Yeah.
poisoned
Yeah.
someone that's
Yes,
spoiled, so
yeah.
they don't
Black
recognize
magic and stuff.
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
anxiety or
Yeah.
So I think that's a big
Yeah.
barrier
Yeah.
to mental health access
Yeah.
there.
Definitely.
They're not as educated on topics such as
Yeah.
depression,
And because we don't
anxiety.
talk about it.
Yeah,
We don't talk
exactly.
about it.
Yeah.
for them it's just like, oh, what's wrong? You're
Yeah.
happy? Why?
You're,
No.
you're crazy.
It's like, yeah, you're crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it is breaking those traditional
Yeah.
barriers
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
traditional sort of outlook.
Yeah.
That if
Yeah,
you are
mindset,
inflicted with
yeah.
something, it is a
Yeah.
it's a curse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's look
You know,
like you're
you've got that
broken.
because
Or
Yeah.
like people are after you, or
Yeah.
they're jealous
Yeah.
of you, and
Yeah.
they've done something to
Yes.
thwart
you
your
don't talk about it.
success.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it.
I feel like youth put a lot of pressure on themselves, especially youth.
Mm.
Yeah.
Definitely has a lot to do with family as well.
Yeah.
Providing for family.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's something so common. This blaming it on sorcery. It's so common back home.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a meme on Facebook one time. It's in Pidgin, but I can explain it to you guys. So there was this guy, like like this guy, his dreams, and where he needs to go, like an office or something, and he, like in order to cross over, he needed to go through this online block place. So like those were the online block places, like people in the village that are trying to spoil him. Like yeah. So, it's so common back home,
It is.
and we joke about it, but
Yeah.
it's the reality of it,
Yeah.
because
And it's
people
a
believe in
relation.
it so much. It has an effect on us. Yeah. I think for me, I mean, I'd probably start with my own family first. Because it's really hard to change your parents. They're so set in their ways. Can't do that. And from the islands, you respect your parents. So I think if I was to make a change, I'd probably start with my own family, my kids, and give them that space to talk to me about things that are bothering them. I just wanted to add that I think it doesn't only happen in our homes, but in our schools as well. And we can't, I know for us back home, there's a level of respect we have to give to our teachers, and so oftentimes, like we address them as Mrs. this, Mr. that. Here it's different. I came here and they're like, my lecturers are like, call me by my name. I'm not your sir. I have a name, and so coming from that to this, it was a real eye opener, and it's something that I didn't experience growing up, and also asking questions. Asking questions was often seen as like you don't know what's going on, so you're asking a question. And so if the teacher asks anyone has any question, we all, like, even though we didn't know, we just sat there like this. and so coming here, like, I had to really break out of that shell and be like, oh, I have a question, no one's watching. And when I asked the question, no one's laughing. And with the 2 internships I did as well, I really had to ask questions in order to get the job done. So yeah, it was a real eye-opener. But yeah, start with my own family if I wanted to make the change.
Yeah. Definitely start with your own family. I was lucky enough to have a mom. My mom and I, it was just my mom and I for a really long time back in Fiji. So I was very lucky to have her. She's very open-minded, and she's actually the one that got me to go to a counselor when I was 6 or 7, because I was going through a lot at that time as a kid. But my mom's very open-minded. So is my biological dad somewhat. But if I were to tell my grandparents what counseling is, my dad's side back in Fiji, they wouldn't know. And then you'd have to if I told them that you just sit and talk, and then they'd be like, that's it? You can do that with me.
Yeah. But will you listen though?
If you listen though.
Will you listen without saying, that happened to me, I just did this?
Yeah. So and then definitely I'd start with my own family. Like my mom, I'd make sure that my kids can talk to me openly, tell me anything, and I wouldn't judge. I'd always be there for them. It's a big thing. Be there for them. Yeah.
Right. For me, it's, I can see with my whānau is I think I'm gonna fall into the pitfalls that my family's had, but there'd be a few things I changed by being more there for my kids. Because it wasn't that my family wasn't there, it was when your family's part of the Defence Force, they're away 14 months in Communicado or the middle of the night, gone. You'll ask anybody in your whānau, sorry, classified. You don't know where your whānau is, and just for us it's been too stubborn and being too proud. So that's why we didn't really ask, and that's something I would change, is try and be there for it, since I can see myself falling into the pitfall of being recruited into that life, into that style. So if I do choose to go down that path in life, if I have a whānau of my own, then I'll have to try and make a greater effort to be more in their life and around them, versus I'm away for 14 to 28 months. I'll see you twice a year maybe, versus I'll see you more on a regular basis, and we'll have these open dialogues, and I'll hopefully be there more involved.
Thanks, Regan.
Yeah, he was talking about the cultural layers coming into play. That's definitely true for my province, maybe for all of Papua New Guinea. Like the fathers don't get involved with the daughters; they get involved with the sons. So the mother is the one who's supposed to look after all matters pertaining to the daughter. So, my dad was a lawyer, so he was quite busy. And then when he came home, he wasn't very emotionally present or available. So that would be something that when or if I have children, that would be something I would make a priority. And it would be something that I would look for in a husband, if he's able to be a present father for the children. Because I think it makes a huge difference in terms of the mental health outcomes of the children. And yeah.
Wow. Such rich conversation. It's been amazing. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. Really appreciate it. We've had food, we've had fellowship, we've had tears, we've had fun. But I think we really need to be able to provide a platform, right?
Yes.
And through this, we're able to share your stories. Otherwise, we wouldn't hear them. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tami.